welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. This is a really exciting one because it's kind of a culmination of a lot of things we've been discussing, which is mostly in terms of the whole breaking into cyber, the cyber skills gap situation, and kind of a solution for that, or at least Greg's opinion on that. So really happy to introduce Greg today. Greg?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, my opinion does not equal a solution per se, but at least it's something to think about. Thanks for having me. So I'm Greg Gaast. I've been I'm currently starting a role as a CISO. I'm not signed, so I'm not going to mention the company yet. Yeah, we're here to kind of talk about the industry and the hiring practices and all that stuff. I think I'm not sure where to begin. I think what I think is not necessarily what other people think, and really it's I'm trying to think of a word to describe this without saying it's a bit of a poop show. I think that the roles that we have first of all, let's start with what you just said, breaking into cyber. The fact that we're all moaning about, well, we need 4 million more people in cyber, and then everyone's having to break into it like they're, trying to rob a museum or something, tells you right away that something's wrong. I think it's an interesting problem because it's weird not being interactive, by the way. I think the roles that we have in the industry are broken, and I think that's a reflection of the industry itself. Most people trying to get into cyber, they are trying to be a SOC analyst or a pen tester, and that is literally that's got to be like 80% of the people, if not 90% of the people that I meet that want to get into cyber want to do one or two things. And weirdly, it's also where the shortage is. There's tremendous demand, and I'm amazed to see people in their early 20s making 50+ K a year or contracting at £700-800 a day as a SOC analyst who just sits there and reviews incidents. There's tremendous demand for this, and I'm going to go back to an analogy that's really tired now, but it's my analogy for the security industry. It's, you imagine a car factory where you're building things and you've got like 100 stations along the line where the car gets assembled, and then you push it into production, or rather you push it out into the parking lot to be sold. Except they're pushing it from the third floor, and it goes into production or in this parking lot, completely mangled up, and then people rush in. Let's set it aside. Let's build a workshop. Let's assess what's wrong with it. Let's see what's broken. What parts do we need? What's the process for fixing that part? Which tools do we need in that process? How do we prioritize? How do we not step over each other? What standards should we follow? Let's get some auditors in here to make sure we follow those standards. Let's get some vendors in here to sell us better tools to do it. And every 3 minutes there's another car falling down. And that's the security industry. We're constantly reacting. And 95+% of the roles are in that parking lot. All the interest from people wanting to get into cyber is, I want to work in that parking lot. But no one wants to just walk into the factory and say, hey guys, can we just maybe get the assembly line to go down the ground floor? Very few people actually work at making things secure. Everyone works at finding problems that have been let through, basically. And I mean, I started out basically as a teenage hacker, and back then you had a dial-up modem. You were directly onto the internet with your machine's IP address. There were no firewalls, and you would get on IRC and you would brag to other internet relay chat for your kids out there. I don't just sit there. I just saw JJ Davies coming. Mm-hmm. And you would go out and you would mingle with these other hackers, and it'd be highly competitive, and everyone would try to hack everyone as well as things at large. So you put a lot of time to make sure that your actual machine was secured. Like, you actually spent far more time securing your own stuff than trying to hack into other things, even though you may have done that as well. And that's always kind of been where I'm from. But now there's the people going into security aren't really doing that. And the security industry itself isn't really doing that. You think of security, and it's detection and response, it's EDR, it's pen testing, it's vulnerability assessments, it's that kind of stuff. That's where it's really focused. There's very little about actually protecting stuff. It's about detecting stuff. Now think of that from a business standpoint. It's horrendous. It doesn't provide much assurance. It costs an absolute fortune, and good luck explaining it to a senior management team. So that's where it all kind of starts breaking down. So the first thing is we really need to shift those roles back that way. And the problem is the security industry is telling everyone that this is how you have to do things. So we are creating demand for the roles that we actually really need to start getting rid of. I'm not saying we don't need pen testers, but we probably have, if we actually did proactive security, we'd have a massive surplus. I mean, 90% of the pen testing and security people out there would be unemployed tomorrow if we started doing security proactively. So there's this big gold rush into security because there's all these roles in security, but it's because the approach is fundamentally flawed. So that's something you really want to be aware of. And is that something you want to contribute to? Or do you want to go more, hey, I want to do more engineering, I want to get more into business engagement, I want to do process, I want to make sure things are done well, consistently. So that's my first question out there. Like, do you really want to do this? Because it gets old, and you see the burnout levels in SOCs, they are insane. Like, people switch jobs every 6 months in some places, which is fantastic for you guys, obviously, at West Point. But
is that something you've noticed, Holly?
Pardon?
Is that something you've noticed about SOC people burning out and sort of changing roles quite rapidly?
Yeah, I would say so. I'd say in those sorts of roles, you see more movement. And as you said, we actually don't get many engineering roles at all coming through, which is interesting. You'd think that would be, there'd be more demand for that. But yes, a role that I haven't really worked on too much myself. But we've placed many pen testers and SOC analysts as well.
Yeah. So and that's just weird to me, and I just need to give a shout out to Jason Allen, who used to hack via smoke signals back in the day.
So I just quickly run through
that describes IP over smoke signals, I believe, somewhere.
So I'll just quickly run through some of the people who've left comments. So we've got Paul, Brahim, Jamie, quite a lot of people welcome in. Someone from sunny Lincolnshire, which I quite doubt that. People coming in from Sri Lanka. JJ Davy, he doesn't just sit there, he drinks coffee and he also stands. The smoke signals. Sapphire Eagle is happy to see Holly here.
Hi, Sapphire.
We've got Mohit who wants to put some light on security assessment. Management still thinks security is a plugin. Instead, it should be part of the implementable process. Issue with plugin is it can be removed. It's not a must to have requirement.
Yeah, I quite like what Mohit said there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Martin Pressy is saying the same thing as well. It's very reactive. Like, and you see, a lot of companies do this. They'll get pen tests. It's like your development processes are flawed. Your system administration processes are flawed. The way you provision systems is flawed. You're introducing vulnerabilities all over the place, and then you get a pen tester who comes and then tests and like, oh, I found these vulnerabilities, and then they go in and they fix those vulnerabilities. But the issues are coming from, the issues are basically procedural, cultural, deep down. So you're only catching by doing that, you're catching what's being pushed out to the surface, fixing that. But there's always, your systems are developing, your code is developing, you're always pushing new things out, and no one's actually fixing the core so that you're pushing clean stuff out. But, you should be, it's working when pen testers are consistently finding absolutely nothing, at which point you're like, well, do I need to pen test every 3 weeks? Maybe I can do this once a quarter. You start lowering your security costs. And a lot of that is down to business engagement. It's just how to explain things. And I've had so many conversations with executives where I'm explaining, for example, the analogy I just gave to you, that makes so much sense to us. That seems like it would actually work. And that's how we do quality management in marketing and product and other things. So it's completely relatable. The way we do cybersecurity is we're so kind of dogmaed into it that it's just normal. We do it without even thinking. If you take a step back, it's very weird. And I'll hire like unconventional profiles. And everyone's like, oh, I want a CISSP with this and that and 10 years experience and blah, blah, blah. But I put that guy in the parking lot and he's going to run immediately to the first car he sees and start changing body panels. Great. That's what I hired him to do. But then when I hire, some retired military helicopter technician or 21-year-old student, which some of my hires from last year, the first thing they go is, why are we lobbing cars off the third floor? And they're afraid to ask because they feel stupid because they don't know what all the other people are doing. But actually, you're pointing out objective truths that are strategically far more valuable to me. Is like, that's a really good point. What do you think we should do about that? Fix body panels or go talk to the people who manage the assembly line? Yeah, let's go talk to them. So
that's actually something JJ has talked about quite a lot, the fresh perspective. I'd be interested to hear his thoughts on this as well as yours.
And shout out to JJ because, I mean, the man wears Christmas bubbles in his beard. Hello, ladies.
An icon.
Yeah. So that whole thing to me is broken, and it's interesting because I find myself consistently hiring people that I consider to be really high value candidates, and almost every single time they are people the market did not want. They just cannot even get an interview. They don't have a skills profile that will get through an ATS or an HR filter. And meanwhile, I'm consistently being offered candidates by recruiters, and I'm just like, I have no use for this person. These are just not things that are pertinent to the way I approach security. Like I don't need to do all these things. I want someone who can actually engage and fix the problems more fundamentally. And I find people who are less indoctrinated by the security industry tend to be much better at security because they're able to actually think around problems as opposed to this is how you do it. And part of this problem, and I think this is interesting because I'm heartbroken, to be honest, at the difficulty that so many candidates are having trying to apply for roles. They're simply not getting through, they're having to deal with, the computer just went really slow. They're having to deal with, a computer filter, an ATS system, and then the HR department, and then processes before they even get to the hiring manager. And I find that weird because I've never used a recruiter ever, and I've actually come up to you guys because I'm just hiring in a new market now where I have absolutely no coverage in my network. But other than that, never. And I've never used HR to post a job. I've always found people. You do something as simple. And I think if you're a leader, if you're a hiring manager, you should have some kind of presence and passionate about what you do, and you should know people and you should network, and that should just come naturally. And so it's quite easy to find people because people are really, really struggling to get jobs despite this. Yeah. And it's weird how people are having to go through all these hoops to even talk to a human being to show who they are and their fitness for the role. Someone just said HR, in my own opinion, gets in the way. Like I agree. I mean, I think HR has the human resources, but there's nothing human about it. Try dealing with most organizations. I've met some HR leaders who are absolutely fantastic, and they want to go back to being talking to people and being human and rewinding the clock and having that human contact to it. And that's how you find the best people, because no level of passion is going to translate. It's going to be an ATS system is not going to read that off of your resume, first of all. Mm-hmm. And the second thing is like these crazy requirements for X years of experience and, why certifications. I'm like, well, first of all, I've met like 18-year-olds who have 6 months of experience, but they are so passionate that they have more know-how than a guy who's been sitting on his butt for 20 years doing butt kiss with that job title. So what years is a time is a terrible level for like unit of measurement for experience. If I do something once a year for 5 minutes for 20 years, do I have 20 years experience? It's a ridiculous unit of measure. And then the other one is the certification. Like, why do you need a CISSP? Ask them that question. Why do you need a CISSP? I mean, there's I haven't read it in decades. I got mine 15 years ago, let it lapse, and I haven't looked back since. But there's like 12 areas that it covers. Is that part of it? Like encryption and risk assessment and this and that. Do you really need the person to know Diffie-Hellman and how that works? Is that important? Can they not just Google it? It'll take you 5 minutes on the Wikipedia page. If you need that certification, why? And if you know why, why don't you just ask those questions directly instead of just putting that in a queue? You were just filtering out people like crazy. And it's ridiculous. And most of these roles, your junior roles, and you want to see ISSP, you want this, you want that. It's, first of all, it's a book that you can read in a week and a half comfortably. It's just not that much knowledge. People think it's a senior certification. It really isn't. It covers what I would say is maybe 1/5 of the very basics. So it's just, it makes no sense to me. And I think that this is laziness on the part of hiring managers. Is that complete failure to engage with the candidate. I rarely look at resumes. I just want to have a chat with someone, and within 5 minutes you have a good feeling or not. You can ask a few questions, and I hate like these technical, specific, do this type of interview. I forget what they call them. Just talk about a situation, describe an anecdote, see how they respond. See how they frame the situation, and just make them feel comfortable and talk about it. It's like, you just do this or that, and it doesn't have to be that like. Sometimes the interviews are so dry. You see candidates like they ask this very specific scenario, and there is a very specific answer for it, or not even that specific, but with no context. And in practice, there's about 15 different ways you can handle this, and the person asking you the question probably doesn't even know themselves, and you're not gonna pass that question because it's stupid. Because the person asking the question doesn't even know what the real answer is or what's best for them. Like Steve Jobs said, you don't hire people and then tell them how to do the job. You're hiring them because they know better than you. I think this whole like failure to engage is a real problem from hiring managers. I think we are in an industry where, let's face it, IT is not known for its strong people skills, and when it comes to management and leadership, that is a real problem. And ironically, like these are cultural problems. They go in every direction. So it causes this complete failure to communicate and to relate and to understand the candidate and what the candidate could actually contribute. But it's also the very reason why that, say, head of InfoSec has been completely unable to engage the business and get security built into processes. And this is why security is siloed, is just reactive, because it has no traction in the business. And that's why it's creating all these reactive roles, because they've not been able to engage, CFO, COO, CEO, and say, look, we need to build this into our processes. Better for us. We can make it part of our brand. We can create value. We can increase sales. And it's going to be a lot cheaper because we're going to need less security and we're going to be more secure. They haven't been able to sell that because they simply don't have the people skills. They don't have the engagement skills. And that's reflected on the other side, where they're unable to engage and speak directly to the candidates, and they're hidden behind walls of ATS filters and HR stuff. So that's definitely a problem. Go on.
So I think I'd like also to hear Holly's side of this, because obviously as a recruiter, you're dealing directly with these hiring managers and then taking it to the candidates. So when you sort of see these incredibly strict requirements that just, that the person to fill this job doesn't actually need to do that, how do you kind of go about pushing back?
Sorry, because I just put this in there because it's perfect timing, because I wanted to mention this. Like a lot of people hate on recruiters, and I mean, some of them, they're just horrendous salesmen. I'm sorry, but some of you are.
There's definitely a bad bunch.
I hear more and more recruiters actually trying to educate hiring managers, and they're coming to me like, we know, Greg, we realize this now. We're trying to get them to relax with their requirements and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm hoping that's what you're about to say.
Yeah, I just think it's like what you said. There's a lack of communication. We'll get a job spec with this huge list of requirements, and we'll say, do they actually need this? And they say no. So why is it on there? In the skill, because that could put so many people off. And we try and get down to the main three things that they actually need, and quite a lot of the time they're not even on the job spec or the advert, and it's like, well, these are two different jobs. You could have missed out on a lot of opportunities. So I think it's just the communication, especially when it's going through hiring managers, HR, and then a recruiter. If they're not communicating properly on what they actually need, the process can be really broken, and you just miss out on so many good candidates. So I think there just needs to be so much more communication. And then, as you said, on the candidate side, when you look at a CV and when you speak to someone, again, it can be two completely different things. So I just think people need to speak more and make things a lot clearer. To just make the process easier rather than all these hoops and crazy requirements that aren't really necessary.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, especially so most people breaking into anything tend to be young, so they don't have a lot of life experience.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't dealt with companies and HR departments. They don't know how the system works. They maybe don't know how to present themselves. So chances are they're probably not going to write the best resume. It's not going to jump off the table. But if you talk to them for 5 minutes, you realize this person has a lot of potential, and that's what gets you interested. And it's a lot of people tell me, like, oh, it's, we don't have time to review all these kinds. I'm like, I spend far more time fighting HR bureaucracy than speaking to and selecting candidates. So don't tell me, if anything, it saves me a lot of time to just go directly, because typically I'll find the candidate very quickly, and then I'll spend the next 3 weeks dragging them through HR and kind of, fuzzing the lines to make them fit through all the HR filters, and fighting for them. And that's another thing that kind of pissed me off a while ago, and I think I did a post about this, is there are some hiring managers who will go above and beyond in selecting the candidates. Like, they've taken the time, they've met the people, but then they allow HR to step in and say, no, you can't hire that person because of XYZ requirements. But then they're like, well, sorry. Fight. I mean, if you know this is the right candidate for you, fight your HR tooth and nail. I've been in it. I remember my last job, especially at the beginning, I was quite happy with everything, but HR was really standing in the way. And there was one day where I almost threw a chair through the window in the HR department. It was the only department in the entire organization that actually has a front desk guarding you, so you can't come in and interact with anyone. And it was just barrier after barrier after barrier. Don't let them win when you have an organization like that, an HR.
Well, you guys spend a great deal of time fighting with the HR departments to get the right people over the line, right?
Yeah. It's quite ridiculous. Like, no, we have to vet. It's like, you guys understand absolutely nothing about the issues we have, the team we have, the culture we have, the dynamic we have. This is the right person. No, because they don't meet these criteria. Those criteria are the very problem that we're fighting, on a daily basis, and the overhead that's driving us up the wall. So please bugger off. So that bothers me. Sorry, that was just meant to be like a quick comment, not a 5-minute chat.
No worries. We've actually got a ton of comments that I just want to read through some of them. So Danielle said, this is where shift left comes in. DevSecOps, proactive security, and security built into the foundational cores of the business to ensure that things are secure from the ground up, instead of exposing everything and having a million vulnerabilities and getting external pen tests. So that's kind of back to what you were saying at the beginning, Greg. So Jason says, cyber seems very compartmentalized. What about people that are able to look outside of the box? So a lot of people basically agreeing with you. Fabrizio says we need more JJ. Agreed. So JJ will have you on the next coffee morning then. Paul says sometimes the square wheel.
We need a Christopher Walken more cowbell meme, but with more JJ.
Paul says sometimes the square wheels on bike need to be questioned. Not just saying, that's how it's always been done. It's not just cyber you found that in. Yeah, pretty much that happens in a lot of companies, a lot of industries.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like all this shifting left. We're an industry that talks about diversity to no end. Everyone's on their soapbox about diversity, and yet we have to standardize every role. We don't consider the human element. This is the way we've always done it. Do it this way or we won't hire you. You come from a different industry. Sorry, we don't want you. We are the most averse industry to thought diversity or different backgrounds. And I'm not talking about like skin color and gender and orientation, but just different ideas. We reject them immediately. So I think it's quite ironic that we do that. About certifications, like I know certifications. Now I did a bunch of certification 20 years ago when I started in the industry, really. So the first thing I want to say is, if you're starting out and you're trying to make this your profession, don't spend all your money on certifications. It's really, really predatory right now as an industry. There are 80% of the certifications I see on LinkedIn scrolling by, people talking about, I don't even know what they are. And I guarantee you that most hiring managers have even less idea than I do. So it's become really hyped up. Everyone's trying to sell these certifications, and they're expensive. They're getting very expensive, and the courses are very expensive. And now I don't understand why anyone would actually take a course. Order the book from your local bookstore like Borders or Barnes and Noble. Oh wait, they've all gone bankrupt. Order it off Amazon. Take a couple of weeks to read the book. Take a month to read the book. Take 3 months and reread the book 5 times, and just go take the test. Spend the 400, 500, 600 quid now that the test is, and get your cert that way. Don't bankrupt yourself on these certifications. There's places now that are doing. They're training you on certifications in exchange for a percentage of your salary. That seems bordering on slavery. Like it's weird. It may work. I don't know, but I find it a bit odd. So definitely don't go too far. I remember I think in the span of 16 weeks, I got 14 Cisco certifications because they were beta testing them at the time, and they were free. But if you passed, you got the cert. So it was just like bang, 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 bang. Take the test, get the book for the next one, next weekend, take the test, and so on and so forth. So definitely, I don't want to say anything bad about certifications. Well, I do, because they're crap. But they some of them at least certainly help opening the door. And sometimes, just saying preparing for, that's enough to get you through to the ATS. One personal comment that I want to say is, I don't put a lot of stock into security certifications because it's very generic, and security has everything to do with your particular organization. You will not do things, or you should not do things, the same way in 2 separate organizations or 2 separate departments. There's always a different optimized way of doing things. That's for security certifications. However, things like MCSE or CCNP or certifications about Red Hat Certified Professional, things about specific products or platforms, I actually value those much more. Because I know if someone comes in who's a CCIE, he's like, this guy can configure any Cisco router or switch any way we need, any day of the week. I know that my MCSE, I know that he's going to know Active Directory inside and out. He's going to know Exchange, he's going to know all this stuff. Those are technical skills that I need. All the security ones are very kind of nebulous. They all kind of decide what's important, what's not, and it's never going to be a fit for your company. I want a security mindset that has the technical skills on specific products. That is more valuable to me. So I'd actually invest more than that. Right? I think people should invest more in that. But other than that, I never put a certification requirement in a job spec. I never put a year's experience in a job spec. I think we need to convey this to hiring managers. Like that just needs to stop because it's just stupid.
We've talked quite a few times with different people about who the responsibility of this kind of lies with, whether it's the recruiter, the hiring manager, the HR. I think it's everyone, right? It's a mix of everyone, and we all need to collectively get better at this.
Yeah, we just need to communicate, what's realistically, what's actually needed, what the market's saying, and just make sure everyone's clear on what they actually need, and we're not looking for something that doesn't exist. So I think it's just a case of communicating the reality of things.
Yeah, I would have just comment on a couple things. See, Danielle, I totally agree. Like it's not so much the certs, but because he's saying something, the value I see in certs is a structure that's there you go. Yeah, it does help you, get as many as you can. It does help you get an idea of what all is involved, but it can also give quite a false impression because a lot of people just limit themselves to that. I started out with, JJ's making more good points. Damn you, JJ. Sorry, I totally forgot where I was going. I started out, I was like, okay, well, I like computers. What's this Linux thing? And I'm like, okay, this is Linux. And well, how does this DNS server work? How does a web server work? How does Apache work? How does Bind work? And start kind of going from there. It's like, oh, well, how does Bash scripting and Perl scripting? And every time I discovered something new, I'd pick up a book about it, and my knowledge just kind of grew organically. Maybe I had some gaps somewhere else, and I went back to them and this and that. Which I guess to Daniel's point. And I think, God, it's so weird not having any kind of structure to this. People need to learn. And one thing I hear people complain about a lot is that the skills requirements are unrealistic in job spec. And I'll see someone post a job spec and it wants Linux knowledge and networking knowledge and Windows knowledge and this knowledge and that knowledge. And everyone's like, oh, and they expect all this for blah, blah, blah. And that's outrageous. What they want here is an entire team. And I don't think that at all, actually. I expect any well-rounded, even junior security professional to know some Unix, to know some Linux, some Windows, some TCP/IP, have a basic maybe, play around with some routers and some firewalls and know how Active Directory works and AWS works. I expect all of that. But I don't expect you to have 10 years of experience in it, because I know that you can read a book in a week and you'll be all right, to have that basic level of knowledge. And which is why it's not a showstopper. If I see that you've made an effort and learned other things and you just haven't had any exposure to something else where I need some skills, then I know that I can give you a book and within 2 or 3 weeks you'll be up to speed on that. So I'm really not worried about that. Like, I'm working now heavily with AWS. I've barely touched AWS in my career. It's always been Azure and Rackspace. But spend the weekend watching every webinar, read a couple of books, and play around in the console, and within a month you're up to speed. So I don't think the expectations are too high. It's the fact that the hiring managers seem to think that they are hiring static robots incapable of ever learning something new, and they don't make allowances for that. They don't have flexibility for that. That's the weird thing too.
Yeah, definitely more of a focus on people who show that they can learn new things and take that on quite quickly, and more than that, are passionate about it and want to learn more things. I think that says far more. I mean, when we were looking for internal staff here, obviously not cyber-related roles, but we were looking for people who had the passion and some of that kind of raw talent that we knew would come in and do their best to learn everything within a reasonable time frame. And it's worked so much better than putting up some kind of like, oh, you need 3 years in this program, 6 years in this software, that kind of nonsense. It just blocks you off from getting the right people, like Holly was saying before.
Right. I mean, I can't remember what I had for breakfast, and I got a computer with an internet connection, learned what Linux was. All this prompted by seeing the movie Hackers, by the way, because Angelina Jolie was in it. Actually, not the way to get girls, it turns out. And within less than a year, I had the Defense Department and FBI kick my door down for hacking a nuclear weapons facility. So if someone who's I'm going to say of average intelligence can do that in a year in their basement or spare room, while going to high school and getting drunk most weekends, why do you need 10 years experience in all these things?
Absolutely.
It's just not necessary. Like, I much rather have someone, hey, we have a problem. How do we fix this problem? Let me look it up. Let me Google it for you. That's how I solve most problems. Google stuff and go talk to people. And then directly work for me, which is great.
So Murray said, willingness to learn, curiosity, creative problem solving, and a good attitude. These trump experience every time. Candidates should focus on being able to demonstrate these qualities because good companies recognize and value these. And that's a good point about a bit of responsibility on the candidates to show that they have that passion and they can do that.
I agree, because again, what is experience? If you don't have those qualities, if you don't have that curiosity and you don't go into things, what experience are you building up. Yeah, I've got 20 years of not looking into anything new. Great. I'd rather have someone who in 6 months was curious about absolutely everything, because you actually know more than the other person who spent 20 years learning very little. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious what the best answer ever was, Paul.
I think that probably was what you were just saying then about the 6 how you learned in a year.
Yeah, it's just just learn what is needed, and it was little, how do you hack SendMail? Like, I don't know, but this computer has SendMail and I want to hack into it, so let me read up on SendMail. Oh, 3 hours later, yeah, I think I can do this. Oh, look, I'm in. It's that simple, Bear Grylls, do what he says. Yeah, I think I'm all ranted out on that.
Yeah.
Very often. Maybe we can go back to Jay. I mean, Jay's made the point where educational institutions fail to advise students how to market themselves as a professional. Now, I'm a high school dropout, so I don't know. But I suspect that's the case, and I also find the curriculum quite limited, because, like, again, if you study cybersecurity, you're going to learn maybe forensics, pen testing, and some basics of IT. That's what most of the cybersecurity courses are like. And I did a guest lecture at university, and I was actually talking about how you build a security program and what's really behind breaches, and they had absolutely no exposure to this. It's like, how do I engage the entire organization? How do I find out what's going on? How do I create processes? How do I get buy on those processes? How do I make sure that those processes are actually implemented holistically and consistently? How do I make sure that it's within the culture and the capabilities of the individuals to make to keep those processes going? These are all things that they'd never thought about, or nothing left or anything like that. It was interesting because there were I think there were 42 students in that room, in that lecture hall, and they just looked like deer in headlights the whole time. Like, I thought they were bored out of their mind. They didn't say a word. Every single one of them messaged me on LinkedIn afterwards, asking if they could do an internship or something, because they had absolutely no exposure to that. So what they teach you is very limited. It's very technical, and it's very to the extreme right, or downstream, shall we say. We'll get political. Don't do what Bear Grylls said, lost my job. And I don't think degrees are necessary either. I mean, to answer Jamie Pegg's question, they are a curriculum. First of all, the curriculum depends entirely on who put it together. And what I've learned is that the people in education, often the people educating people that work education, often have little to no exposure of the real world or how things work in practice. So the curriculums they put together often don't really reflect, if you're teaching medicine, that's great. Human beings tend to work the same way. But if you're doing how to do security in organization X, it varies. It varies a lot, and it evolves very quickly. You still, medical procedure, other than the advancement of technology, the human body is still the same today as it was 50 years ago, and will be in 50 years, more or less. But technology progresses very quickly. Techniques progress very quickly. And not just the technical stuff. We are learning more and more about human factors and culture and the impact that has. Unfortunately, that is really, it's 80% of the picture, but we're giving it like a 0.1% of consideration. Yeah. Just reading. Yeah, but just to go back to Jay's point, I don't think, especially because it's people starting out, especially. They don't know how to engage, and that the number one piece of advice I give to people is just network. Just right now, that is LinkedIn. Get on LinkedIn. Other countries I've learned, like in Germany, apparently crossing is very bigger than LinkedIn, but it's changing. But get on LinkedIn, connect with people, talk. I was actually really quite late to the game. I used LinkedIn for probably 10 years. Just to look up people. Who are they? I'm about to apply for a job. Who's this? That kind of thing. It's not until you start actually writing some articles, writing some posts, engaging people, having some interesting discussions, voicing an opinion, really helping others. I had kind of rock star syndrome for a long time, where I had a lot of technical know-how, but I kept it to myself because that was my value. And it wasn't until I started kind of just giving it all away that, now I'm getting recognition, and that's elevating me to a leadership role, and I'm actually enjoying this much better than sitting behind a computer all day. So that's, I forget how I got here. So absolutely network, because there are, like we said in the beginning, there are ridiculous barriers between you and the job you want. And I've had candidates come up to me and say, "Hey, I saw you post a job about something. I want to apply. I really, but," and I was like, "I never got that." I was like, "You would have been great for it. I never even saw your resume because you got filtered out somewhere." So had you networked, had I known about you, then I could have spotted you and dragged you through HR. So that's always going to improve your chances. So that's the system is simply broken. So you have to work your way around this. You have to network to get to the hiring manager. Now, 90% of them will probably suck, but you'll have a much, much better chance with the remaining 10%. You will be basically playing in a smaller pool, and it's the same thing. Like if you advocate, things like shifting left, show that you have holistic thinking, show that you consider the business, show that you consider how things interact and this and that, and that you're not just a drone to drop into that pigeonhole. That will appeal to a small subset of hiring managers. That will appeal to maybe 10% of them. So you're playing in a much smaller pool, but the density of candidates in that pool is actually even lower. So even though you've got fewer opportunities, you've got much higher, exponentially higher chances of actually getting one of those. Because there's, I struggle to find people who are, well, I don't struggle, but there's a minority of people who have those skills, that curiosity, that interest, that kind of dynamic nature, that flexibility. And a lot of them are actually in static positions that they absolutely hate, where they hate their boss and they can't do what they want, and they're not growing and they're limited and they're just told what to do. So we have to find, and there's lots of employers that are perfectly happy having a bunch of drones, but let's at least try to liberate the ones that have that special talent and get them to the right hiring managers who will leverage them. And brilliant visceral imagery. Wow, big words, but. Yeah, just kind of, because I think cultural fit is so important as well, and you'll never get that from a resume. So it's really important for candidates and the hiring managers to actually see each other and talk to each other and understand each other before a decision is made, before HR starts filtering out. I think that will help a lot more people find the right place. I mean, a lot of people are not like me. They like just sitting at a desk 8 hours a day doing just one thing, and they're happy with that. And there's a position for that. And there's other people that want to be all over the place. And I'm like, I'm super happy with you being all over the place. By all means, go sniff around. So it's very important to match those people together. Like I want a really dynamic, wide-thinking team, and others want everything to be cogs and machine. And there's advantages to that. It's easy to replace people. It scales well, that kind of stuff. So I'm not saying it's wrong, but the cultural fit is very important. So definitely, yeah, the more you network, the more you can be seen, the better your chances are going to be. Because in a traditional role, they might look you up. You'll look a little bit more interesting than the other candidates. It'll give you an edge, but you'll have a pool of people applying. But it's an edge. Take every edge you can. If you end up, if I'm looking for someone and I see that's going to give you a lot more than the edge. That's basically going to make my mind up on the spot. Like, hey, this person clearly knows their stuff. I can see it just from discussions and other people, and they've written some articles and they've taken the effort to do this. I really like this person. I want to phone them up. I don't even need to see a resume. I don't need HR. I don't need a filter. I just want a 5-minute phone call with this person, see if I like him, and then call them in for an interview. And that's it. And there's never more than one interview, which is also ridiculous, by the way.
There's a lot of long processes. You put a lot of candidates off and you miss out as well if someone has a shorter process.
Yeah. I feel like, gosh, I had one job in Italy. They called me for a second interview after 8 months. They were,
Wow.
they were almost offended that I found a job in the meantime. I was like, oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's Italy. But yeah.
Cool. So I think we've kind of gone over a little bit, but that's to be expected when we're on such a topic.
Thought we had an hour. Sorry.
We can continue if you're good, Holly. I'm
Yeah.
perfectly fine. Yeah. All right. Let's carry on. Now might be a good time for people to chuck in some questions. Any questions you have for Greg or Holly?
I'm just going to move this. That's okay.
I guess also I would like to encourage people to go more left. Do more engineering roles, architecture roles. And the other thing I want to do, actually, I think this is an important one, like the imposter syndrome. People that are not applying. First of all, the system is broken. The system will cheat you and screw you over at every turn because of a bunch of lazy people in HR who'd like nothing more than create processes to act busy, but are actually hampering the organization from hiring the right people. Generalization. So by all means, cheat the system. If you feel that you could do the job, and it doesn't have to be tomorrow, you don't have to hit the ground running, because no one hits the ground running. Everyone's got like a 2 or 3 week acclimation period. That's why you've got a 3-month probation. But if you think that within a month of me catching up, learning a few things, I could actually do this job really well, I'm passionate about it, I'm dedicated, I'll do whatever it takes to succeed, apply for it. Apply for the freaking job and cheat the system. It says CISSP, I'm working on my CISSP. It says networking. Oh, here's a few protocol names. Try to get through that, which is a horrendous way of writing a CV, but because it sounds like you're a machine, but you're literally being judged by a machine on the first round. So get through it. Don't be afraid of cheating the system a little bit. As long as you can genuinely do it. Don't make stuff up that you could never do. But get to it, and don't be afraid to apply. And I think they say this is more an issue with women. They tend to only apply to jobs and they're like 120% sure they can do it, whereas we'll just wing it. This is why we have a lot more motorcycle accidents than you ladies. But
I think it's worth saying that we don't use any kind of ATS system. We literally manually look through every single CV that comes through. And how many would you say we actually reach out to? Most of them, right?
As many as we can. I mean, especially if we've got some new adverts that will have hundreds and hundreds of CVs to sift through, which I think the question from Paul is something that I'd like to say something on. So a mistake, I think, would be to not put anything targeted to the role you're applying for, especially if you are more junior. Just really tailor it to the role. Especially if someone has a cover sheet, I'll always make sure I make sure I get back to them, because I know that they've put the effort in. They've looked at that role, and they're not just clicking a quick apply button. So I think just tailor your CV as much as you can. Obviously, it's a lot of work, but it does make it stand out when you've matched your experience with the role you're applying for, and you can see that on the paper. Or just try and call in and get someone on the phone, because you'll scroll down and find the CV instead of having to work through it, and you'd get there quicker, I think.
Yeah, I think that Danielle's just given some good advice there. One thing I would ask employers to do is please create CV submission systems where I don't have to manually enter every piece of information in the CV after you asked me to enter the CV.
Yeah,
it's just infuriating, and you just don't go there. The thing is, I make your CV stand out not just by the content but the look of it. Make it look nice. Make it easy to read. There's a great website. I use it for my CV, and everyone asks me, where did you get this done? And everyone I've told about it has told me, like, within a month or 3 months, like, yeah, I found a job, I got a better job, found a new job. It's spelled enhance, but instead of an E at the end, it's a V. So enhancecv.com. and very nice, colorful, wavy backgrounds, sections. You can put your picture on there. It looks really nice. It's very, it just pops up. That can really make a difference because it's just visually striking. So they have a look at it, which means you're kind of top of the pile right away. I had one experience, this was about 15 years ago in the Netherlands, where I sent out 300 resumes via email, and I'd gotten one automated "thanks for your email submission" response. And then I went to the store and I bought A4 size envelopes, nice copy paper, actually parchment paper, custom wrote cover letter, and my CV. Put it in there, mailed it in the post, and I sent 6 of those, and I got 4 phone calls back. Tried again in the States a few years later, 0. So it really depends on where you are. So yeah, just anything to get noticed will help, because sometimes you're competing against hundreds of people, so that helps. Someone just suggested Liddy as well, Danielle.
Yeah, I've posted enhanced CV in the chat, so everyone can take a look at that. Just wanted to go quickly back to a comment by Greg, which he's just referred to. As a noob to pen test and InfoSec, I'd love to hear more about why there doesn't seem to be many junior roles available. He asked if this is potentially a COVID issue.
I don't know if it's a COVID issue, to be honest, but there does seem to be this general trend in InfoSec. Now, I don't think this is limited to pen testing. No one wants to train people. No one wants to mentor people. I think is a better, more important than training, because people can train themselves very easily if you put the right culture in place. And I think it's back to those people skills. Like, people are just not willing to put in the time, or they're not comfortable around other people to encourage them to grow. And it's causing them to really avoid junior candidates. And I think it's part of the reason why we're seeing these really high, like artificially high minimum experience requirements, because they just want to play it safe. I want to hire someone who already knows everything, so I don't have to teach them anything. And I think that's a real problem. There are people that, I'm seeing internships and stuff for pen testing roles and stuff. But yeah, there's not really so much of a junior level role. And I think Jay just said it's not billable, because you're testing, and it's the kind of thing where you can't half perform. You can't not know things. You can't miss things and then say, yeah, I couldn't get in. It's perfectly secure. So it is a bit of a trickier one, perhaps. But there's a general avoidance of junior roles. Like, every junior role out there wants 5 years experience, which is not a junior role anymore. But I think that's that unwillingness to invest in people, and it's annoying, because it's literally the most fun part of the job, especially with the entire industry being 90% of the industry being this big naysaying machine, and you just churn out. I've hired several people with absolutely no experience, 20 grand a year, and 6 to 8 months later they get snatched up by SOX and making 40, 50K. And it's all because, well, someone else took a chance on them. You must be good, and then they're okay with it. But initially, they're not comfortable with taking that initial risk, which it's not a risk. If you believe in people, if you pick the right people, if you're willing to mentor them, which is not only way less effort than people think it is, but it's a lot of fun. And you build relationships, you make friends. All my ex-employees are in a WhatsApp chat somewhere. We all still hang out, have drinks, go on drives, whatever. We all forge good relationships. So it's weird how people don't treat each other like people.
So this is a question I was just thinking for both of you. Actually, I think you both have an interesting perspective on this. When you see these kind of, like Danielle said, sort of junior roles, or any kind of role really, masked under the HR job specs that we were talking about earlier, do you think that candidates should apply regardless? And try and get through the process that way and try and get noticed? Because every so often we've had people apply for jobs that they're not suitable for, maybe, but they might be suitable for another role that another consultant in our team has.
I think it's worth. You miss every shot you don't take, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you almost want to preface, like, if you are applying for a job that you actually cannot do just to get in the CV database, at least put that in your cover letter or something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine for blagging it and say I could do this job. I don't meet their artificial requirements, but I can definitely do the job. Then ignore everything HR thinks is important and just apply.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. So a job where you believe that you can do it, and everything you see in the kind of role responsibilities, you're like, I can do that, and I could probably do that really well. But there's some kind of real blocker, like 3 years experience or this or that.
Flag it.
100%.
I mean, I'm sorry, but it shouldn't be necessary. But these artificial barriers have been put into place, and now we have to work around them. And we're not causing the harm. It's the people putting the barriers in place causing the harm.
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't have those barriers and you had more transparency and more communication, then you can actually educate the candidates applying more. It's like, please don't do this, do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they are then recognized when they do it the way you told them to do it, they will value that and they will respect the guidance. But right now there is no guidance. It's just a wall, and you're just throwing stuff at it, hoping something good.
Yeah.
I think sort of one of the ways we deal with it, Holly, is people call up and they're speaking about a certain role, and they might not be applicable, but we always ask them to either register on our site or send over the CV, so we've got them on the database. So the next time the job rolls around, a month, 2 months, a year down the line, we've got their data and we can speak to them.
Yeah, because I see a lot of people. I mean, a friend of mine recently, like he was applying. We told him, well, so he was on my old team, and several other people on my old team were now working at this different company, and they had a role that he thought he could do easily. But then he went and looked at the job spec. But the job spec says this, and it says that, and it wants this certification, and it's got all these extra requirements. I'm like, it's working towards, and just I've never done that. Okay. Well, you've never officially done that, but you've done 100 things for years that are pretty much identical. And there's you could do that without even thinking about it. It's like, yeah, but I've never actually technically done that thing. So who cares? Like you can do it right now if you wanted to. And so, yeah, but all these things, this one says prefer, like really kind of negative and self-defeatist. You just go for it.
Or just pick up the phone. Say, ring the recruiter and say, I don't have this. Is it worth me applying? Yeah. And it may be that you do need that, but we might have something else, or that no, you don't really need that, and definitely apply, and we'll get the ball rolling.
It's funny, when I first started out, I literally just read books, and I started applying for the sysadmin role, and I had 0 job experience. But I would just quote to them what they wanted to hear from the books I read. And if I had a job interview, it was basically a guaranteed job. It was just literally BSing my way through it from what I'd read. Later on in life, once I actually had experience and I knew better than what in the book said, or I took extra consideration of the business context and that kind of thing, that's when I started getting turned away a lot. Because what they expect to hear is what's in the book. And actual experience, even though they're all asking for actual experience, when you had the actual experience, it's what cost you the job, because it wasn't the experience. It wasn't the experience they were expecting to hear, because it wasn't what was in the book that the people with no experience, i.e. me 10 years earlier, would have said. That's how backwards the system is.
Yeah. I think kind of Daniel's point about a company might ask for experience in Team A, whereas you have experience in Team B. Yeah. Apply regardless, because you see skills from Team B can be transferred if you have a good understanding of Team. Learning a new platform doesn't take that long.
And go to their website, see if you can download a trial, play around with it, read a brochure, and literally just blag it, because the difference, the concepts are the same. The difference is literally just the UI, and it's like, I've never driven a Hyundai, but I'm pretty sure I could step in one and figure out how it works. And no one's going to ask me for a different driver's license and that kind of. And I had the exact same situation 15, 16 years ago when they were asking me if I'd use a specific vulnerability scanning tool. I was like, well, I've not, but I can recite the TCP/IP binary preamble off the top of my head. So does it matter? And they completely dismissed me for the interview afterwards. But there was one person on the interviews who afterwards went to like, "You guys are idiots. That guy knows TCP. That guy knows what's being worked on inside and out. Which tool you give him, he'll figure out in a second." And ended up hiring me after that, and giving me 10K more than they said it's out.
Not bad, not bad.
Yeah.
So I think now we've sort of come over our hour. I'm sure we could talk for another couple hours, but so just to sort of close things off, everyone in here, please reach out to any of us if you have any further questions. Obviously, we'll be in the Cyber Lounge chatting in there, continue the discussion. I will post the link to our next event, which is on the 11th. So that's with a lead red teamer from the Bank of England. We're going to be talking about similar kind of topic, but we're going to have a focus on climbing your way up the cyber ladder once you're already in the industry, as well as a discussion on certs. So I've just posted that now.
I'm quite curious what people consider the ladder to be honest.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what
could be such a diverse field, but again, there's not much focus in a lot of the areas, but they are there. So really good stuff.
Yeah, I think that's what we're gonna really go into next week with Manit Sahib and Anthony from our team. And I think that's it from us. Thank you so much for everyone who's attended. Thanks Sapphire, thanks Greg, thanks Paul. Obviously a big thanks to Greg here and Holly for your time and all your insight. I'm sure you can see how useful everyone here has found it. So that's just incredible to see.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me as well. I hope that's been helpful. Just go for it.
Yeah,
full send.
That's a good thing to take from today. So I hope everyone has a fantastic week, and I hope to see you at the next event. But other than that, we'll see you guys later.